Imagine buying your dream cabin, only to get slapped with a $30,000 fine from an HOA you don't even belong to. Sounds insane, right? Well, that nightmare became my reality. And what happened next? The very HOA that tried to bully me is now facing legal battles of their own. Stick around, because this story is about fighting back against entitled people who think they're above the law. I'll never forget the moment I saw that letter. It was a Friday afternoon, one of those rare peaceful days where everything seemed perfect. Birds chirping, sun shining through the trees, and the smell of pine drifting in from the forest. I had just come back from a short hike near the ridge behind my cabin, my little slice of heaven nestled up in the mountains. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat down on the porch, and opened the mailbox expecting maybe a bill or two. Instead, I pulled out an official-looking envelope. The return address? Pine Creek Estates Homeowners Association. Weird, I thought. I don't live in Pine Creek Estates. That neighborhood is a good half-mile down the road, separated by a dense patch of woods. I'd never interacted with anyone from there. Never joined their meetings, never signed any documents, and when I bought the cabin, I specifically made sure, triple-checked, that there was no HOA attached to this property. So, naturally, I figured this had to be some kind of mix-up. I sat back, tore the envelope open casually, and unfolded the letter. And that's when my eyebrows nearly flew off my face. Notice of violation, unauthorized structure on Lot 47, fine due, $30,000, excuse me? I blinked. Then blinked again. I flipped the letter over, thinking maybe there was more information, like maybe this was a mistake and the second page would say, oops, wrong address. But no. The letter went on to explain in cold bureaucratic language that I had violated the architectural guidelines and extended community covenants by erecting non-compliant structures, and that I had 30 days to either pay the fine or face legal action. $30,000. For a cabin I didn't build. On land they don't even control. I laughed. Out loud. I literally leaned back in my chair, coffee in hand, and just chuckled. What kind of nonsense was this? Yeah, right, I muttered. Nice try. But something in the back of my head whispered, what if this is real? So I read it again. Slower this time. And this time, I didn't laugh. Because whoever wrote this wasn't playing around. The letter referenced maps, clauses, fines, a threat of a lien on the property. It had a payment portal link, an actual seal. It looked completely official. I pulled out my phone and started doing some research. Pine Creek Estates had formed an HOA about 8 years ago, and apparently, they had slowly started trying to expand their community governance, as they called it, to neighboring properties. They called them extended area properties in their newsletter, and apparently, they'd been doing this for years, sending out letters like the one I got. What blew my mind even more was the language they used. They said, though your property was previously outside our boundaries, as of our most recent covenant revision, your land now falls under our extended architectural oversight. Hold up. They rewrote their rules and decided they could just claim more land? That's not how HOAs work. That's not how any legal property management works. And yet, here I was, staring at a letter demanding $30,000, signed by their compliance chair and board treasurer, with payment instructions included like it was some normal parking ticket. I sat there for a solid 10 minutes, just staring at the letter. Angry. Confused. A little bit impressed at how bold they were. But mostly just trying to wrap my head around how anyone thought they could get away with this. The cabin I bought had been there for over 15 years. It was built long before Pine Creek Estates existed. There was no shared infrastructure, no roads connecting us, no services exchanged. It wasn't just a matter of different neighborhoods, we were on completely separate pieces of land. My deed didn't mention their HOA. My realtor confirmed that I was buying an independent property. I even paid extra to avoid being under any kind of HOA jurisdiction. And now here they were, telling me I owed them $30,000 for unauthorized development and failure to submit design plans. Design plans for what? A mailbox? I was furious, but also curious. If they were bold enough to send me this letter, how many other people had gotten one? And how many had actually paid it without question? Because let's be honest, most people see an official-looking envelope and a big fine and go straight into panic mode. That's exactly what they were counting on. Fear. Confusion. The assumption that they had the legal right to enforce their rules. But they didn't. And I was about to make it my mission to prove that. What started as a peaceful afternoon in my cabin had turned into something else entirely. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a scam. And if they thought I was going to quietly write them a $30,000 check and go away, they had no idea who they were messing with. Let me take you back a bit, before the ridiculous $30,000 fine, before lawyers and courtrooms, before HOA drama became part of my vocabulary. All I wanted was peace. After years of living in the chaos of the city, sirens at night, neighbors screaming through paper-thin walls, constant traffic, rent that ate half my paycheck, I decided it was time for a change. A big one. I'd been working remotely since the pandemic, and honestly, I was over the urban lifestyle. I didn't need nightclubs or coffee shops on every corner. I needed space. Silence. Nature. So I started looking for cabins. Not those super fancy, Instagrammable ones with hot tubs and floor-to-ceiling glass windows. I mean something real. Rustic. Simple. A place where I could wake up to birds instead of honking horns. A cabin where I could breathe. I searched for months. Most of what I found was either way out of my budget or buried deep inside fancy gated communities with a million rules and, you guessed it, HOAs. Now, I have nothing against every HOA on the planet, but let's be honest, most of them are a nightmare. I didn't want anyone telling me what color my door could be or how long my grass should grow before it became a violation. I wanted freedom. That's when I stumbled across it, the cabin. It was tucked up in the hills, about 2 hours outside the city. The listing was vague: 2-bedroom cabin, fully wired for electricity, well water, fireplace, small garden, on a private 1.3-acre lot. But the photos? Absolutely magical. Pine trees as far as the eye could see. A little wooden porch. A fire pit. And most importantly, no visible neighbors. None. I booked a visit the same weekend. And let me tell you, when I drove up that gravel road, saw the cabin peeking through the trees, and stepped out into crisp mountain air, it felt like I had just exhaled for the first time in years. It wasn't fancy. The wood was aged, the paint was faded, and the gutters needed cleaning. But it was mine. A place where I could write, think, sleep, cook, and just exist without constant interference. And guess what? The realtor confirmed, no HOA. Not even close. The nearest neighborhood with any kind of homeowners association was about half a mile down, and their borders were clearly defined. I even asked twice. "You're free out here," she said. "No monthly dues, no meetings, no restrictions. Just you, the trees, and the wildlife." I signed the papers within a week. The closing process was surprisingly smooth. I paid for a property survey to make absolutely sure the land boundaries were legit, and that I wasn't creeping into any neighboring zones. I wanted to make sure there were no complications. I wasn't about to drop my life savings into a legal headache. Once the paperwork was done, I moved in with just a few boxes and a sleeping bag. I didn't even bring furniture right away. I just wanted to soak it in. That first night, I lit a fire, made a sandwich, and sat on the porch listening to the wind rustling through the trees. Not a single car drove by. No city lights. Just stars. And it hit me, this is it. This is what I've been missing. Over the next few weeks, I settled in. I bought a used couch, a solid oak dining table, and stocked the kitchen with basics. I even built a tiny tool shed behind the cabin. Nothing fancy, just enough to hold my gardening tools and firewood. I started planting herbs. Took daily walks along the trail that wrapped around the property. I felt more alive out there than I had in years. And through it all, I kept thinking how lucky I was to have found this place. No noisy neighbors. No condo board drama. And no HOA breathing down my neck. That part mattered to me. I'd heard horror stories from friends. People fined for parking in their own driveway, getting angry letters for having the wrong color shutters, or being told to take down their Christmas lights on December 26th. Nope. Not me. I was free. I had my land. My trees. My rules. So when that letter showed up weeks later, the one demanding $30,000 for unauthorized structures on property I legally owned, I was blindsided. It felt like someone had thrown cold water on the warm, peaceful dream I had built. How could this happen? I had made sure. I double-checked every record. I paid for surveys. I specifically avoided neighborhoods with HOAs. And yet, here they were, somehow claiming that my cozy little cabin in the woods was under their jurisdiction? At first, I thought maybe it was just a mistake. A wrong address. A typo. But as I'd soon find out, this was something much, much darker. My dream cabin had become ground zero in a war I never asked to fight. And I wasn't going to back down. About 4 weeks into living in the cabin, just when I was settling into my new peaceful routine, something strange happened. It was a quiet Tuesday morning. I was inside making breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, black coffee, when I heard something I hadn't heard in weeks. Knock. 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 I froze. Not in fear, just in surprise. Visitors were not a normal occurrence out here. In fact, I hadn't seen another human face up close since moving in, other than the cashier at the general store about 10 miles down the road. I walked over to the door cautiously and looked through the window. There, standing on my front porch, was a man in khakis and a bright blue polo shirt. He was holding a clipboard and wearing a little name tag clipped to his collar that read, Darren, Pine Creek Estates, HOA Compliance. Now let me remind you, my cabin isn't in Pine Creek Estates. Not even close. That neighborhood is about a half-mile down the road, across a ravine, and separated from my property by a thick row of trees. We don't share roads, trash service, electricity lines, nothing. So when I saw the words HOA Compliance on his shirt, I instantly felt my stomach turn. Why was someone from their HOA on my property? I opened the door and greeted him politely but cautiously. Can I help you? Darren gave me that practiced smile, the kind customer service people give when they're about to tell you something you're not going to like. Hi there. I'm Darren with Pine Creek Estates. We've been doing routine evaluations for our surrounding properties, and I just wanted to talk with you about a few compliance issues regarding your cabin. I blinked. Wait. What? I'm not part of Pine Creek Estates. He nodded, still smiling like this was all perfectly normal. Yes, you're technically outside the primary HOA boundary, but your property falls within what we call our extended oversight zone. I swear I almost laughed. Extended oversight zone? That sounded like something from a sci-fi movie, not real estate law. I crossed my arms. Look man, I bought this cabin specifically because it's outside any HOA. I had a survey done. There's nothing in the deed or title about being under anyone's oversight. He didn't even flinch. Totally understandable, and that's what a lot of people think when they move out here. But you see, our community charter allows us to enforce certain aesthetic and environmental standards on adjacent properties, even those that are technically beyond our borders. He started flipping through the clipboard like he was preparing to read me my violations. I stopped him. No offense, but I didn't agree to your charter. I don't want to be part of your HOA. This property has never been included in your neighborhood, and frankly, I'm not interested in joining. That's when his smile faded just a little. Well, unfortunately, the guidelines do apply whether you agreed or not. It's about maintaining harmony in the area. We've already issued several notices to homes in the outlying region. He handed me a folded packet with the Pine Creek Estates logo on it. Inside were documents, some maps, a printed violation notice, and unbelievably, a fee schedule that included fines of up to $30,000. I scanned it quickly. According to their so-called inspection, my tool shed, my fire pit, and even my window shutters were not in compliance with their design standards. Again, I am not a member. I never signed anything. And now they're telling me that my personal shed isn't regulation because it's not in harmony with the natural surroundings of their neighborhood? I looked him dead in the eye. You realize this is absurd, right? You don't own this land. You can't just decide your rules apply here. Darren's tone shifted slightly. Less friendly. I'm just doing my job, sir. If you have any objections, you can take them up with the HOA board. But I'd advise you to handle this quickly. Fines accumulate weekly. And just like that, he turned and walked off my porch, down my driveway, and into a silver SUV parked just past my gate. I stood there for a minute, stunned. Then I walked back inside, sat down, and read the entire packet from top to bottom. It was full of vague language like expanded authority, regional harmony, and civic uniformity. But nowhere, was there a single legally binding document proving they had any control over my land. Still, they were acting like they did. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't just a misunderstanding. They knew I wasn't part of their HOA. But they were counting on me not knowing my rights. Or worse, on me being scared enough to just pay up without asking questions. And unfortunately, they weren't done. That knock on the door was just the beginning. After that strange visit from Darren, the so-called HOA compliance officer, I thought that was it. Maybe they'd move on once they realized I wasn't going to be bullied. I even joked about it to a friend on the phone later that day. Some guy tried to fine me for living in my own house. Wild, right? But then, the official letter came. Exactly 1 week after that awkward knock on the door, I opened my mailbox and saw another envelope from Pine Creek Estates HOA. This one was thicker. Formal. It had a watermark seal, legal jargon all over the front, and a full-color printed logo at the top. They weren't playing around. I sat down with a pen and highlighter. Something told me I'd need it. The letter started like some government memo. Dear property owner, this notice serves as formal documentation of violations identified on Parcel 783B, which now falls within the Extended Community Governance Zone as outlined in Pine Creek Estates Revised Charter, Section 4A, Article 17. Right out the gate, I was already shaking my head. First of all, Parcel 783B. That's not even how my property is listed on the official county records. And Extended Community Governance Zone? That's not a real thing. It sounded made up, like something from a dystopian novel. But then it got worse. As a result of non-compliant development and failure to submit property improvement plans for approval by the HOA's Architectural Review Committee, you are hereby assessed a fine of $30,000. I nearly dropped the paper. $30,000. For what? They listed several violations: unapproved structure, my garden shed; non-standard exterior, the rustic wood siding on the cabin; unauthorized fire feature, my backyard fire pit, which had been there for over a decade; inconsistent color palette, my green window shutters, apparently not aligned with the HOA's earth tone preference. I sat back, stunned. They were fining me for design choices on my own private property, choices made before I ever lived there, choices that had zero to do with them or their neighborhood. I mean, how could they possibly think this was legal? Even if I wanted to submit property improvement plans, the cabin had been built years ago, long before I even bought it. What plans? The cabin existed before their HOA even formed. At this point, I started flipping through the pages in disbelief. They included a compliance chart, a corrective action timeline, and even a payment plan brochure, like they were doing me a favor by offering 3 easy ways to pay off this outrageous debt. It was laughable, but terrifying too. Then came the final page. The real kicker. Failure to comply within 30 days may result in a property lien, legal escalation, and potential foreclosure proceedings under HOA Civic Enforcement Protocol. Excuse me? Foreclosure? On my property? These people were acting like they were a local government. Like they could just swoop in, rewrite the map, and start handing out penalties like parking tickets. I was angry, confused, and honestly a little anxious. Was this real? Could they actually do this? So I called the county clerk's office. I spoke with a helpful woman named Joyce, who looked up my parcel and pulled the legal zoning records. I asked her plainly, "Does Pine Creek Estates have any jurisdiction over my land?" She laughed. "Absolutely not. They're a private HOA. They have authority only over the lots that fall within their formally registered boundaries. Your parcel isn't one of them. You're in an unincorporated zone, no HOA, no city governance, just basic county code." That was the confirmation I needed. But still, why the letter? Why the visit? Why the $30,000 fine? Simple. Because they were counting on me not knowing any better. They were betting that I'd panic, assume they had power, and pay up. And worse, they were probably betting that other people had already done just that. I realized right then, this wasn't a random error or misunderstanding. This was a scheme. And I wasn't the first target. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to ignore it. I wasn't going to crumple up the letter and hope they went away. I was going to fight back. Because if they had the nerve to hit me with a $30,000 threat, how many others were out there? People who didn't know their rights, who didn't have the time or resources to challenge them, getting taken advantage of? This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about standing up. and it was about to get a lot more serious than they expected. After that ridiculous $30,000 fine showed up in my mailbox, I figured the HOA would back off once they realized I wasn't buying into their nonsense. Spoiler alert, they didn't. In fact, they doubled down. The following week, I got another visit, this time from a different HOA representative. Her name was Carla, and she came with a fake friendly smile, a folder under her arm, and the kind of body language that screamed, "I know better than you." She didn't knock this time, she just let herself through the gate and walked right up to my porch like she owned the place. I stepped outside and met her at the top of the stairs. "Can I help you?" I asked, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Hi there," she chirped, as if we were old friends. "I'm with Pine Creek Estates HOA. I believe you've received our compliance notice. I'm just following up to discuss next steps." Next steps? I raised an eyebrow. "I already told your guy Darren last week, I'm not in your HOA. You have no authority here." Carla's smile didn't even twitch. "That's where there seems to be a misunderstanding," she said. "According to our updated charter, your property falls under our oversight as part of the Extended Neighborhood Compatibility Zone." I literally had to hold back a laugh. Extended Neighborhood Compatibility Zone? That's not a real legal term. She pulled out a glossy trifold brochure, complete with maps and highlighted areas, and handed it to me like she was showing off a timeshare. "Our board voted unanimously to expand the oversight radius for aesthetic and environmental consistency. It helps protect property values across the region." I glanced at the map. It had no official seals, no county stamps, no legal documentation, just a Microsoft Word layout with fuzzy borders and a red circle conveniently drawn around my cabin. "This isn't even accurate," I said, pointing at the line that showed my property included in their circle. "These are your made-up boundaries. You can't just vote yourselves more power." She shrugged, still smiling. "We've already filed notices with several outlying properties. It's better to resolve this informally. Otherwise, legal proceedings can get difficult." There it was. The threat. Not directly stated, but heavy in the air. I asked her point blank, "Are you threatening to sue me for not being in your HOA?" "Oh no, not at all," she said sweetly. "We'd just rather not escalate to that point. But if we don't receive your compliance plan or payment agreement by the deadline, we'll have no choice but to begin formal enforcement procedures, including possible liens." And just like that, she turned and walked off. No further conversation. No room for discussion. Just a veiled threat and a warning that I had 21 days left before things got serious. I stood on my porch for a long time after she left, the brochure still in my hand. It was unbelievable. They were literally trying to bully me into paying them $30,000 using a combination of fake documents, fake maps, and legal intimidation tactics that would scare the average person into submission. And here's what really got me: none of it was official. There were no county filings, no legitimate zoning changes, no formal notifications from any government agency. This was just a group of overreaching HOA board members using fake documents and pressure tactics to trick people into thinking they had legal authority. They were betting on fear. And honestly, I could see how it might work. I thought about my elderly neighbor 2 lots over, a widow who lived alone. I thought about the retired couple I met at the hardware store last week. What if they had gotten the same letters? What if someone told them their home was at risk, that a lien was coming, that they owed tens of thousands of dollars? Would they have known to question it? Would they have just paid it, scared of losing their home? That's when the anger really kicked in. This wasn't just some silly power move from a local HOA trying to boost their ego. This was predatory behavior. These people were scamming vulnerable homeowners under the disguise of legal authority. And worse, they were getting away with it. But not with me. I decided right then and there I wasn't going to just defend myself, I was going to expose them. So I started documenting everything. Every letter they sent. Every false claim. Every map, every brochure, every ridiculous buzzword like compatibility zone or aesthetic consistency radius. I took photos. I made digital copies. I backed it all up on a hard drive and a cloud server. Because something told me, this was going to get a lot messier before it got better. And if they wanted a fight, well, now they had one. I wasn't scared anymore. Now I was furious. By this point, I was past confusion. Past the maybe this is a misunderstanding phase. This had crossed into full-on intimidation territory. The fake maps, the outrageous fine, the friendly visits from HOA reps, none of it felt like an accident. These people were organized, persistent, and worst of all, confident. They thought I'd cave. But they didn't know me. I'm not a lawyer, and I'll admit, a lot of legal paperwork makes my head spin. But I'm also not the type to roll over when someone tries to take advantage of me, especially not in my own home. So I picked up the phone and called my friend Eli. Now, Eli isn't just any friend. He's a property attorney. The kind of guy who lives and breathes zoning laws, deed restrictions, land use regulations, the stuff most people avoid like the plague. We'd gone to college together, and while I ended up in digital marketing, he went down the legal rabbit hole and never came back. And I was suddenly very grateful he did. When I told him what was happening, he didn't even hesitate. "Email me everything," he said. "All of it, letters, brochures, maps, names, photos. If they stepped on your land, document that too." I sent him a massive folder, scans of the $30,000 fine, the extended oversight zone nonsense, the brochure from Carla, even a screen grab of Darren's business card from his visit. It took him less than 24 hours to call me back. And his tone? Pissed. "This is garbage," he said bluntly. "None of it is legally binding. These people are writing their own rules and trying to pass them off like actual law. That fine? Completely unenforceable. The map? Not recognized by the county. That extended zone they keep mentioning? Fictional. Like, laughably fictional." I asked him the big question: can they actually file a lien against me? "No," he said flatly. "Not unless they can prove your property is under their governance, which it's not. Your deed, your parcel record, the zoning, all of it says you're independent. They're bluffing, hoping you panic." Eli wasn't just giving me peace of mind, he was now officially on the case. "I'll draft a response letter," he said. "Certified mail. Legal language. We'll demand proof of jurisdiction. And when they can't provide it, we'll put them on notice for harassment." That felt good. But I wanted to go further. I told him about my elderly neighbor, the one I suspected had also received a letter. About the retired couple I'd talked to at the hardware store who said they paid something to the HOA a few months ago but weren't sure why. Eli paused. Then said something that sent chills down my spine: if they're targeting other property owners, especially elderly folks, with fake legal threats to extract money, that's fraud. And if they've done it more than once, it's not just civil. That could turn criminal. That's when the whole situation shifted for me. This wasn't just about me anymore. Sure, I was the one getting threatened now, but what if someone's grandma down the road had already cut a check for $5,000 because she was terrified of losing her home? What if someone had refinanced their property just to avoid a lawsuit they were never actually in danger of facing? I started asking around. Politely. Casually. Just knocking on a few doors, making some calls. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I just asked if anyone else had gotten letters from Pine Creek Estates. The answer? Yes. More than one. A man in his 70s had paid $10,000 just to make it go away. A widowed teacher down the street paid $6,500 to avoid legal trouble. And not one of them had questioned it. That's when Eli stepped in again. "We need to escalate," he said. "If they've been doing this systematically, and especially if funds were misused or collected under false legal claims, we can loop in the district attorney. Maybe even the media." So that's exactly what we planned to do. But first, Eli fired off the certified legal letter, on official letterhead, lawyer language turned up to 11. It basically said, "My client is not under your jurisdiction. Any further communication without proof of legal authority constitutes harassment and will result in civil and criminal action." We mailed it. Signed receipt. Done. And just like that, radio silence. No more letters. No more visits. No more threats. For about 2 weeks, it felt like maybe they finally got the message. But then, Eli got a call. From another lawyer. Representing Pine Creek Estates. They wanted to discuss resolution, and asked if we'd be willing to settle the matter privately. Eli's response? "No. But I'll see you in court." At first, I thought it was just a case of an overzealous HOA trying to grab a little too much control. But the deeper my lawyer and I dug into it, the more it became clear, this wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a gray area. It was a coordinated scam, one that could have cost people their homes, their savings, and their peace of mind. We're talking systematic fraud, disguised as compliance. Let me explain. You remember that brochure the HOA gave me? The one with the made-up Extended Community Oversight Zone? That was just the tip of the iceberg. When Eli started investigating, he noticed something immediately. None of their materials had any legal standing. No signatures from county officials. No zoning board approvals. No filings with the land registry. Just a bunch of documents they designed themselves, made to look official. They had maps with colored boundary lines, but when we compared them to the actual GIS records from the county, their claimed boundaries didn't match reality. Not even close. In fact, their new borders extended well beyond their legally recorded HOA zone, encroaching into private, independently owned properties like mine and dozens of others. It was like a neighborhood drawing lines on a napkin and deciding they could rule half the mountain. But the scariest part? It wasn't just for show. They were sending these letters to real homeowners, attaching real fines, and threatening real legal consequences, all based on those fake boundaries. Eli said something I'll never forget. This is like if a private neighborhood decided to declare themselves a city, without permission, and started taxing people who don't live there. That's how absurd this was. But here's what made it even darker: it was working. Over the next 2 weeks, we uncovered multiple cases of homeowners who had paid thousands of dollars in fines, just to avoid the legal nightmare the HOA was threatening. Most were older folks, retirees, or people who had bought remote cabins like mine thinking they were safe from all this HOA drama. Some of them had even made modifications to their property, like repainting their homes or tearing down sheds, just to avoid further punishment. And worst of all, most of them never knew they could challenge it. That's what made the scam so effective. It relied on confusion. The HOA used made-up legal terms that sounded legitimate. Fear, they hinted at liens, lawsuits, and even foreclosure. Pressure, they gave tight deadlines, 30 days or less, to respond or comply. Shame, they suggested non-compliance was hurting community value. It was psychological warfare, dressed up as paperwork. They even had fake violation photos taken from public roads or, in some cases, trespassing to snap pictures of people's backyards. That's right, they were stepping onto private land and photographing infractions like fire pits, fences, and garden boxes. When Eli saw that, he went full bulldog. "This isn't just shady," he said. "This is criminal trespass. If they set foot on your land again, call the sheriff." We compiled everything. Every neighbor's testimony. Every fake map. Every receipt. We created a full dossier and submitted it to the county zoning office and the local DA's office. And the response? Let's just say we weren't the first complaint. Turns out, Pine Creek Estates had been on the county's radar for a while, but no one had followed through with legal representation until now. Most people were too intimidated, too unsure of their rights, or too busy just trying to avoid trouble. But with Eli on board, and the evidence we had, they finally had a case. A big one. The DA's office opened a formal investigation into the HOA's board of directors, specifically their president, treasurer, and compliance officer. Charges under review included mail fraud, harassment, unauthorized practice of law, civil rights violations, and potential conspiracy to defraud. And get this, they were also looking into how much money had been collected through these fake fines, and where that money went. Because here's the twist, it wasn't being used for neighborhood maintenance or community improvements. Nope. According to preliminary records we pulled, thousands of dollars had been funneled into things like personal car payments, vacation board retreats, and even golf memberships. All under the label of board expenses. This wasn't just about control. This was about greed. A small group of people had decided to expand their power, and their wallets, by scaring others into submission. And now, they were finally being held accountable. As for me, I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the one who called them out. And I wasn't alone. Once we submitted our evidence to the county and the district attorney's office, things started moving fast. But what came next? No one saw it coming. Because within days of the investigation going public, after the first legal notices were sent to the Pine Creek Estates HOA board, something incredible started happening. More people came forward. It started small. A woman named Janine emailed me after hearing about my case from a local Facebook group. She owned a small A-frame cabin about a quarter-mile past mine, also outside of the HOA zone. She'd received a similar letter from the Pine Creek Board just 3 months earlier. Her story? Almost identical to mine. She was fined $12,500 for unauthorized roofing materials and an unapproved deck extension. They told her if she didn't pay by the end of the month, they'd file a lien. Not knowing any better, she paid it in full. No questions asked. She said, "I thought I'd done something wrong. I didn't want to lose my house." I sat there reading her message, and I was just gutted. But then more messages followed. An older man named Frank, who lived even deeper in the hills, had paid $7,000 for non-conforming mailbox design. Yes, seriously, a mailbox. A retired couple named Bill and Martha? $18,000 in accumulated violations they didn't even understand. And in each case, the pattern was the same. They lived outside the legal HOA boundary. They got letters filled with official-sounding nonsense. They were threatened with foreclosure or lawsuits. And they paid, scared, alone, and unsure of their rights. It was horrifying. And now, with the board under investigation, people were finally realizing what had happened to them. Word started to spread, on social media, through neighborhood watch groups, and even local news. A short clip about my case aired on the local ABC affiliate under the headline, "Homeowner fined $30,000 by HOA he never joined, now he's fighting back." That one segment brought in dozens more responses. People who had been too ashamed to speak up. People who thought they were the only one. People who had quietly drained their savings to avoid legal action that was never real to begin with. It was heartbreaking. But it was also empowering. Because now, they weren't just victims, they were witnesses. And their stories added fuel to the fire that was burning down Pine Creek's entire scheme. Eli was collecting statements daily. We created a secure online form for others to report what happened to them. Within 72 hours, we had over 40 confirmed victims, and counting. Ranging from small $2,000 compliance notices to outrageous $25,000 threats, every case had one thing in common. None of them lived in Pine Creek Estates. None had ever agreed to the HOA. None had signed any documents. But they all got the same fear-based letters, dressed in legal language and backed with fake authority. Eli summarized it perfectly in an email to the DA's office. This wasn't accidental overreach. This was a fraud ring, using the appearance of legal power to extort money from unsuspecting homeowners. And the fallout? It was immediate. The board president resigned the same week the news broke. He cited personal reasons, but everyone knew what that meant. The HOA's attorney tried to distance himself, saying he had no knowledge of what the board had been doing. But email records and bank statements told a different story. In one shocking discovery, we found that over $300,000 in payments had been collected through these fake fines in just under 18 months. And where did it go? A brand new Lexus SUV. A luxury cruise to Alaska labeled as a leadership retreat. Multiple community improvement charges that couldn't be traced to any actual improvements. It was all a lie. And now? It was all coming down. For the first time, I started getting emails and phone calls, not from victims, but from people thanking me. One woman said, "You standing up gave me the courage to speak out too." Another man said, "I thought I was the only one. Now I know I'm not crazy." It was humbling. I didn't set out to be some whistleblower. I just wanted to live in peace in my cabin. I wanted quiet nights, tall trees, and no drama. But instead, I'd walked into a legal landmine, and somehow, stepped up to expose it. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. And now, we were finally being heard. You know that moment in a movie where the villain finally gets dragged into the light, and everyone starts seeing them for who they really are? That's exactly what this felt like. After weeks of investigation, collecting statements, media coverage, and victims coming forward, it was time for the one thing Pine Creek Estates never thought would happen: court. It started with a public hearing at the county courthouse. Nothing fancy, just a procedural review of the HOA's actions, triggered by our formal complaint and the growing list of victims. But once the date was set, they showed up. The entire board of Pine Creek Estates came rolling in, suited up like they were attending a corporate shareholders meeting. The president, who had technically resigned, still showed up with his lawyer, trying to appear innocent. Their compliance officer Darren looked like he hadn't slept in days. And Carla? She kept her sunglasses on indoors, as if that could hide the embarrassment. Eli, my lawyer, was calm and cool. He'd prepared binders of evidence, photos, letters, maps, testimonies, and financial records. He even had a PowerPoint ready to present to the judge. This wasn't some wild accusation anymore. This was a structured, evidence-backed case. The room was small, packed with victims and reporters. It felt surreal. Just a few months ago, I was standing on my cabin porch reading a fake fine and wondering if this was some twisted prank. Now I was sitting beside a lawyer, in front of a judge, with 40+ other victims behind me, ready to bring the truth out. The HOA's lawyer tried to play it off. He opened by claiming that Pine Creek Estates had good intentions, and that the oversight zone was part of a voluntary compliance initiative. He said the letters weren't technically threats, just requests for participation in a broader community vision. Cue the eye rolls. The judge wasn't buying it. He asked one question: did any of the homeowners who received these notices sign any agreement giving your HOA authority over their property? The lawyer hesitated. No, Your Honor. But, then explain how you justified fining them tens of thousands of dollars and threatening foreclosure. Silence. Eli stood up with perfect timing. He flipped open a binder and said, Your Honor, may I direct your attention to Exhibit C-12? A letter sent to my client stating that he would face legal escalation and property seizure if he did not pay $30,000 within 30 days, despite having zero legal obligation to this HOA. The judge leaned forward. Is this real? Eli nodded. Certified mail. Signed by the board president. We have 14 others just like it. The judge raised his eyebrows. That's when it started unraveling. Over the next hour, we laid out the full scam. Fake boundaries drawn without legal authority. Fabricated compliance violations with made-up rules. Threatening letters using legal terms to create fear. Collected payments from dozens of people under false pretenses. The financial records were the final nail in the coffin. Eli showed how funds from these fines were used for personal luxuries, nothing to do with neighborhood upkeep. Golf trips, luxury car leases, spa reimbursements. It was all in the statements. The HOA board didn't have answers. Every time they were asked a direct question, who authorized this fine? Or where is this in the charter? They stumbled. They weren't just in trouble with the court. They were humiliated. And in the back of the room, the media was eating it up. Local news outlets had cameras rolling. One reporter whispered to another, "This is going to be the HOA scandal of the year." After 3 hours of testimony, documents, and very awkward silences from the board, the judge finally said, "This is one of the most egregious examples of overreach I've seen from a private entity pretending to exercise public authority. You have no legal jurisdiction. You lied to homeowners. You intimidated them. And you profited." And then, in one beautiful moment, he announced that the case would move forward to civil court, with potential criminal referrals to the district attorney's office for fraud, harassment, and unauthorized debt collection. You could feel the shift in the room. Victims who once felt powerless, now they were getting justice. And me? The guy with a cabin in the woods who just wanted some peace? Now I was the first domino in a chain reaction that was about to take down the most corrupt HOA in the state. As we left the courthouse, people clapped me on the back. Strangers shook my hand. One older man, who had paid $8,000 in compliance fees, said with tears in his eyes, "You saved me. I didn't know what to do until I heard your story." That moment? Worth more than any courtroom victory. But the battle wasn't over. Because next up? Depositions. Lawsuits. And maybe, just maybe, handcuffs. After the courtroom showdown, you might think the story slows down. Nope. If anything, that hearing was just the beginning of the real battle. See, once the judge referred the case to the district attorney's office, things shifted from civil drama to potential criminal prosecution. And when the DA gets involved, it's a whole different ballgame. Eli and I stayed in close contact with the DA's team. They'd been gathering evidence, interviewing witnesses, and digging into financials that the HOA had tried desperately to hide. The charges they were considering? Serious stuff. Mail fraud, sending deceptive letters through the postal service to collect money illegally. Harassment, using threats and intimidation tactics to scare people into paying fines they didn't owe. Criminal trespassing, the board's compliance officer caught stepping onto private properties to snap photos of violations. Conspiracy to defraud, the coordinated plan to expand their jurisdiction and extort money. And here's the kicker, this wasn't just a rogue board member or two. The entire HOA leadership was under suspicion. Emails we uncovered showed conversations planning the fake maps, the fine amounts, and the aggressive collection strategy. They were explicit about wanting to scare people into paying. At first, the board members denied everything. Carla, the compliance officer, claimed she was just following orders. The president said he trusted the attorney and didn't know about the money misuse. Darren, the guy who knocked on my door, suddenly couldn't recall key details when questioned. But the DA's investigators didn't let them off the hook. With the victim statements piling up, financial records in hand, and sworn testimonies, the DA announced they would be filing criminal charges against the board members. It was a watershed moment. For the homeowners, it was a huge relief. Finally, there was a chance for justice beyond just getting their money back. For the HOA leaders, the stakes couldn't be higher. They faced not only fines and restitution but possible jail time. I remember the day the DA's office called me to break the news. "Your courage and persistence helped us build a strong case," the lead prosecutor said. "This is exactly the kind of fraud we want to put a stop to." It felt surreal. From a letter demanding $30,000 to criminal charges? Who knew one cabin owner could shake up an entire neighborhood? But the fight wasn't over. The HOA board hired a new attorney who tried to negotiate a quiet settlement, offering to refund some money if everyone agreed to drop charges. No way. Eli and I, along with the DA, pushed back hard. "We want full accountability," Eli said. "No settlements. No shortcuts. This was a crime, and it needs to be treated like one." Soon, subpoenas were issued. Depositions were scheduled. The media was buzzing. Local news called me for interviews. Neighbors came forward on camera, sharing how the fake fines affected their lives. It was overwhelming but empowering. And while the board's leaders prepared their defense, many victims started receiving refund checks as a result of the pressure and exposure. Still, for me, the best part wasn't the money. It was seeing the community come together, standing up against bullies who thought they could push people around with fake rules and threats. The story even caught the attention of a national HOA watchdog group, who contacted me to offer support and spotlight the case. It was proof that no matter how small your fight seems, standing up for what's right can ripple far beyond your front door. Now, as we prepare for the next steps in the criminal trial, I'm reminded every day why this matters. Because it's not just about one cabin or one homeowner. It's about holding power accountable, protecting neighbors from scams, and proving that no one, no group, no HOA, no matter how entitled, gets to play by their own rules at someone else's expense. After months of legal battles, court hearings, and intense investigations, something finally started to feel right. The fake fines, the ones that had caused so much stress and heartbreak, were beginning to be undone. One by one, the victims started getting refund checks in the mail. I still remember the day I opened mine. It wasn't just a check. It was a symbol. Proof that standing up to corruption works. But it wasn't just me. Across the mountain and nearby valleys, dozens of homeowners were seeing their hard-earned money come back. Janine, the woman who had paid $12,500 without knowing her rights? Her refund was nearly full. Frank, the retired man charged over a mailbox? He got a check that covered all the fines and more, money he planned to put toward fixing up his cabin. Bill and Martha, the retired couple crushed by $18,000 in violations? Their relief was palpable. They told me, "We can finally breathe again." It wasn't just about the money. It was about justice. This wasn't charity or a giveaway. It was a refund for a crime that had been committed against them. The HOA board had been forced to return the funds as part of the legal pressure and public outcry. Even better, the county had introduced new rules requiring HOAs to submit transparent financial reports and get prior approval for any boundary changes. This was a direct result of the scandal. People began to realize this case wasn't just a one-off. It was a wake-up call. HOAs everywhere could no longer get away with shady tactics, because the community was watching, speaking up, and fighting back. The refund sparked celebrations in local coffee shops and social media groups. Homeowners shared stories, photos of their checks, and advice on how to protect themselves in the future. For me, the refunds were a milestone, but also a reminder. This fight was about more than money. It was about peace of mind. The ability to live without fear of arbitrary fines or threats. It was about knowing your rights, and having people in your corner when those rights get trampled. And the best part? The cabin was still mine. Quiet. Peaceful. Just the way I wanted it. By now, you've heard how my peaceful mountain cabin turned into a battleground with an HOA that didn't even have jurisdiction. So let me share some hard-earned tips to make sure you don't get caught in a similar mess. 1. Check HOA boundaries thoroughly before buying. This is the most important step. When looking at a property, don't just ask if there's an HOA. Ask, where exactly do their boundaries start and end? Can you get official maps or documents? Are you inside the HOA jurisdiction or just nearby? I triple-checked before buying my cabin and still almost got caught. Always ask for legal boundary documents, not just neighborhood brochures. 2. Read your HOA agreements carefully. If your property is in an HOA, make sure you read every page of their covenants, conditions and restrictions, CC and RS. These are the rules you agree to follow when you buy. Look out for vague language or clauses that allow them to fine you. Know your rights. If something feels off, consider hiring a real estate attorney before signing anything. 3. Don't pay unexplained fines without question. If you get a letter from an HOA demanding payment, don't panic and don't pay immediately. Verify if you're actually part of that HOA. Check the legality of the fine. Ask for proof of your violation and their jurisdiction. If anything seems shady, consult a lawyer. Remember, HOAs can enforce rules, but only if you're actually a member and they're acting within legal limits. 4. Keep records of all communications. Whenever you get letters, emails, or phone calls related to HOA fines or violations, save everything. Document dates, times, names of people you spoke with, and what was said. If you ever need to fight a fine, this paperwork can be your strongest defense. 5. Know your local laws. HOA laws vary by state and county. Some places have strong consumer protections against HOA abuse, others less so. Check with your county government or a local attorney to understand your rights. For example, many states require HOAs to register with local authorities and follow strict guidelines for fining homeowners. 6. Don't be afraid to speak up if you suspect an HOA is overstepping. Don't stay silent. Join local homeowner groups, share your experiences, and support others who might be in the same boat. The more voices, the stronger the pushback. 7. Get legal help early. When things feel wrong, reach out to a real estate or HOA lawyer immediately. Even a quick consultation can help you avoid costly mistakes or scams. In my case, having Eli on board made all the difference. Remember, HOAs can be great for maintaining neighborhood standards, but only when they play by the rules. If you're outside their jurisdiction, or if they're acting like bullies, you have the right to fight back. Once the dust started to settle from the court battles and criminal charges, something truly inspiring happened in our little mountain area. The neighborhood wasn't just a collection of cabins anymore, it became a community in the truest sense. People who were once strangers bonded over shared struggles and victories. Homeowners who'd been scared into silence began hosting meetups, potlucks, and town hall-style discussions. We exchanged tips, resources, and support. Janine and Frank, who I'd connected with early on, became local advocates, helping neighbors understand their rights and spot red flags. The local county even stepped up, offering workshops on HOA laws and homeowners' rights. They brought in experts to educate us on how to recognize scams and what to do if we ever faced similar harassment again. Together, we pushed for stricter oversight of HOAs in the region. Our collective voice got attention from elected officials who promised to tighten regulations and increase transparency. The scandal served as a wake-up call, not just for Pine Creek Estates, but for all HOAs statewide. More than anything, this community rebuild was about trust. It wasn't easy. Many people had lost money, and some still felt bitter about what happened. But choosing to come together instead of turning away made all the difference. Today, our mountain area feels safer and more welcoming than ever. We still have our quiet cabins and peaceful forests, but now with a layer of protection and unity. I'm proud to say that what started as a fight against corruption turned into something much bigger, a movement toward fairness, respect, and community power. And every time I walk out on my cabin porch, I'm reminded that standing up, even when it's scary, can change everything. The Pine Creek Estates saga might feel like a local story about one rogue HOA, but its impact reaches far beyond our mountain cabins. This case has become a blueprint for homeowners everywhere fighting against overreach and abuse of power. HOAs exist to maintain community standards, property values, and neighborly cooperation, but when they abuse their authority, that trust shatters. What happened here shows that HOAs cannot extend their jurisdiction beyond legal boundaries. Homeowners must know their rights and challenge unjust fines. Transparency and accountability are non-negotiable in community governance. Since our story went public, homeowner groups nationwide have contacted me, sharing similar horror stories and asking how they can stand up. Some states have started proposing new laws inspired by our case, making it easier for homeowners to dispute illegitimate fines and hold HOA boards accountable. This fight is about democracy at the neighborhood level. When people blindly accept HOA demands without question, it opens the door for abuse. But when we educate ourselves and band together, we protect not only our properties but our freedom from intimidation. And here's the crucial takeaway: HOAs are powerful, but power without accountability is dangerous. If you live in an HOA or near one, take this story as a warning and a call to action. Know your boundaries. Know your rights. And don't let anyone bully you into paying fees that aren't justified. Because as our experience proved, the law is on your side, if you're willing to stand up and fight. After everything I've been through, the surprise $30,000 fine, the court battles, the refunds, and the community coming together, I want to share a few final thoughts. First, if there's one thing I hope you take away, it's this: don't let fear silence you. When that letter first arrived, I was stunned. I almost ignored it, thinking it was a mistake. But I didn't. I spoke up. I fought back. And that choice changed everything. Second, knowledge is power. The more you know about your property, your HOA's authority, and your legal rights, the better you can protect yourself and your family. This isn't just a story about me or one HOA, it's a lesson for all homeowners. If you ever feel threatened by an HOA, take it seriously, but don't panic. Get advice, document everything, and find support. Third, communities matter. The neighbors who stood with me, the lawyers who fought for us, and the officials who listened, without them, none of this would have been possible. Together, we're stronger. Now, what's next? I'm committed to continuing this fight. I'm working with homeowner advocacy groups to educate others and push for better laws to protect us all. And I want to help you too. If you liked this story and want to learn more about how to protect your home and your rights, subscribe to the channel. I'll be sharing tips, updates, and stories that matter. Remember, no one should have to live in fear of fake fines or bullying HOAs. We have the power to change the system, one step at a time. Thanks for sticking with me through this journey. I hope my story inspires you to stand up for yourself and your community, just like I did. Thanks so much for watching. If you've ever dealt with an overbearing HOA, or just want to protect your home and rights, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any updates. Drop a comment below if you've had a similar experience or if you have questions. I'd love to hear your story. Remember, standing up matters, and together we can make a difference. See you in the next video.